You are listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. Sustainable World Radio brings you in-depth interviews, news, and commentary about exciting, creative, and innovative ways of living. Produced in Santa Barbara, California, Sustainable World focuses on positive solutions to environmental challenges, solutions that adhere to the permaculture ethics, earth care, people care, fair share. Are you interested in learning more about permaculture projects around the globe, how to plant a food forest, restorative design, or ethnobotany? Then stay tuned to Sustainable World Radio. I'm Jill Cloutier. My guests today are Guner Tautrim of Orella Ranch here in Gaviota, California, and Australian Keyline designer and permaculture teacher Darren Doherty, who joins us by phone from Flagstaff, Arizona. So let's start with Darren. Darren, can you give our listeners maybe just an update on what you're doing right now, your world tour, and how you got involved in permaculture?
Oh, goodness me. How long is this interview?
We have about 10 hours, Darren.
Well, to answer your first question about the world tour, we, about 2 years ago, we started talking with some people in the United States who voiced an interest for us to come over and do some work over here teaching and consulting. And it took us about 2 years of planning and saving up to do it. And so we finally did that, and we've been on the road pretty well since March of this year. We first went to New Zealand and then did some teaching there, and then went to Argentina, and I've got a couple of clients down there on a 100,000 acre ranch down there and a 26,000 acre ranch down there. And then we came up to the United States and did a round of Keyline courses, one of which was at Guner's, and we also did a sort of a day workshop for local farmers there as well, which was fantastic. And the 6-day workshop we did at Guner's and Heidi's was great too. We did some more workshops around California and then over into the East Coast, and then did a 6-day Keyline workshop in Spain, and then went around Europe and met and talked with a lot of permaculture folk all around there, and then spent a month in Ireland and did the same there, and then came back to the United States in early September, and we've done I think 5 Keyline workshops since then, and we're now travelling with the Yeoman's Keyline plough, and that's being towed behind us across the country, and we've just spent a better part of 5 days on the old Route 66 getting over here to Flagstaff, and we'll be in Bakersfield tomorrow.
What a sight to see is the Keyline plough being towed through Bakersfield.
Yeah, well, we've got actually tomorrow on Monday. It's pretty exciting. We're having some meetings with some of California's biggest farmers and talking permaculture and Keyline with them, which is exactly what we wanted to do. I mean, my emphasis from day one with my permaculture work, having grown up on a farm, has been to engage permaculture with agriculture. Agriculture as an enterprise and as an industry covers more area than any other industry on the planet, and has a greater impact on our environment than any other industry on the planet. So it seemed natural to me to try and get permaculture into agriculture, and so it's, tomorrow's meeting is just another step. This weekend's meeting is just another step in in the road along that goal.
That's incredible to involve industrial and large-scale agriculture in this.
Yeah, well, it is, and a lot of my colleagues may be critical of that. There's been articles written about about industrial farming and permaculture's role in it, and how it's sort of like the antithesis of permaculture, which from its early beginnings, it's certainly the case with permaculture. But to me, we've got to be realistic. I mean, these enterprises aren't going away, and they have just as much as they have an ability to do negative things, they have the same ability to do positive things. So it's just a matter of opening doors and working with these people.
That sounds it sounds very inclusive.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, it's something that, like I said, it's something from day one of our business. We've wanted to work in agriculture for the reasons I mentioned, and I'm just very excited at the possibilities now, particularly given I've got 15 years on the board now, and we've got lots of successes, and we know our stuff, so there's nothing really stopping us answering any of the questions and getting the solutions that we need.
Guner, how did you get involved? Tell us about your ranch here in California, and then tell us how you got involved with the Keyline workshop with Darren.
Absolutely. The Orella Ranch has actually been in our family since 1866. I'm sixth generation, my son's seventh, and so a long history on the coast. The ranch that we currently live on, the Orella Ranch, is down to 300 acres. There's also a ranch behind us, La Paloma, that's 700 acres that is also in the family. My great aunt owns that, and that ranch is mainly avocado, but the coastal ranch has historically been cattle grazing for a long time. There was some dry land farming taking place there by my great-grandfather, but for more or less it's been a cattle ranch. And at this stage in the game, a 300-acre cattle ranch is definitely not that big. And after my education and traveling and coming back and living on the land and homesteading, we started to think about ways that we could expand our agricultural importance in the local area. And it definitely wasn't with just a 300-acre cattle ranch, because you just can't produce that much. So that's when we started looking at our options, and there's a few issues that you need to address, and one of those is water. And we realized that, as my great-grandfather only did dry land farming, that's somewhat restrictive in what you can do. So we have a well on the property, but a well is, all your eggs in one basket. So started researching, and I had a bit of history with permaculture and knew a bit about permaculture, and then started hearing about this advanced permaculture deal called Keyline, and I'll leave it up to Darren to give us a good definition of Keyline. But it basically relates to water, and my ears perked up, and I realized, hey, this could be right up our alley in terms of Orella and how Keyline could help work for us. So I made the contact with Darren, heard he was coming to the States, did some communications via email and such, and photos, and he perked up as well when he saw the topography of our property, and it really lends itself well to this kind of work. So maybe Darren can give us a bit of a definition of Keyline, and then I'd be glad to discuss more of how Orella is going to benefit from it.
Okay, so Darren, would you like to tell our listeners what Keyline is?
Keyline design was developed in the 1940s and 1950s by a bloke called P.A. Yeomans, who was a mining geologist and earth mover. And he bought a cheap down and out property just outside of Sydney, and he transformed that into what is still one of the best properties on the planet. He transformed its soils and reversed the myth of that it takes 1,000 years to create an inch of topsoil, and also transformed the myth that you couldn't make a property in Australia drought-proof by using this integrated technique that he developed. And basically, he used the techniques of mining. And in mining, you use a lot. Mining has a lot of issues with water management, because water is very important to washing ore, as it is just in terms of diverting water away from your mining activities. Otherwise, you just can't mine. So miners have a very good understanding of water flow and water harvesting and all of that, so it was natural for him to bring those techniques into what he framed in Keyline. As far as soils were concerned, he was inspired by the likes of your own Louis Bromfield back in the 40s and 50s with his soil development work using a chisel plough and cover crops and all of that sort of thing, and applied those techniques to the integrated design that Keyline is. Also put in trees and shelter belts and incorporated all of those sorts of systems into what became Keyline design. So it's an integrated design system that, like permaculture, brings together a few different disciplines like water management, soil management, water harvesting, energy cycling, and farm design. And, you know, David Holmgren, the co-founder of Permaculture, said that P.A. Yeoman's first book, the Keyline Plan, was really the first book on functional landscape design ever written. And, you know, still to this day, if you had that part of your library, it's a pretty thin part of the library, the functional landscape design. There's not too much of it out there, unfortunately, with the exception of the permaculture books. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that sort of brings it into a nutshell. Guner's property, I mean, when I saw the photos of it, I mean, those guys are very fortunate and unfortunate that they've lost so much land over the years as well, because they had a lot more land. But the block that they've got is very suited to Keyline because of the topography. Having a foothills type topography, so you've got the ability to harvest water off the slopes and store it in ponds, and then relieve that water from those ponds to do irrigation of the pastures and other crops that you might grow.
I know one of the benefits of Keyline, and I'm wondering if it is related to the rainwater harvesting and kind of keeping the water on the land. Doesn't Keyline produce topsoil rather quickly? Yeah, well, that's, as I said before, it's sort of based on a bit of Louis Bromfield's work and a lot of other people's work over time, where they weren't satisfied, as Yeomans put it, with mere soil conservation. I mean, why stop at conserving something? What we should be doing is regenerating and creating. And we use a subsoil plough in the best case, a Yeoman's plough, which is another thing that Yeoman's developed, this particular type of plough that doesn't turn the soil over, that allows air, water and light to get into the soil and breaks all of the compaction and helps the roots get deeper and helps to build the soil depth. I mean, I've got remarkable results with it, you know, up to 15 inches of soil in 3 years. I mean, on some sites, which is, you know, that's equivalent to what they used to say would be 15,000 years worth of topsoil growth. So, I mean, when you look at it from that perspective, it's pretty amazing. And you know, it's been great travelling around the United States with this plough, starting over in New York and giving demonstrations to farmers, to, you know, real bona fide farmers, and they can see their earth being opened without being turned. So it's a very, very non-invasive technique, and it just seems so obvious to them that this is something that we should do, and that we should, you know, that the foundation of our system is the soil. I mean, it's the foundation of our civilization. If we don't look after our soil, well, then we're gone. So, Darren, would you say the response of the farmers that you've met and the people in your workshops has been, they're pretty open and receptive to this? Oh, yeah, it's been, there's been a lot of wow sort of going on. We gave a workshop in Canandaigua a few weeks ago at just near Finger Lakes in upstate New York, and it was on an organic buffalo farm, and also a beef cattle operation, and about 500 acres or so. We put the plough in the ground, and the soil had a concreted layer, literally concrete, about 2 or 3 inches down, and basically
the whole farm was operating on a soil depth of about 2 or 3 inches, and we broke through that layer on the Friday, and then we came back on the Sunday, and we ploughed again with the same lot of farmers, and it had rained. We got half an inch of rain on the Saturday. That rain had now, in the area that we'd ploughed on the Friday, had gone down a full 12 inches. So no way that it could have got down there otherwise, because this layer that we measured at 300 pounds per square inch of resistance was just not allowing any moisture at all to get through. So as soon as the farmers saw that, my colleague Keith Ryan from the Yeoman's Plough Company sold a couple of ploughs just based on that. And it's quite big. Yeah, and similarly, when we were in Ohio on the weekend, and we had about 50 farmers come along to a field day there, and they were similarly amazed at what we could do on the bottomlands, and then what we were doing on the ridges of quite a steep slope as well, and they could see the pattern of how we're able to get that moisture into the ground and really catalyse the whole process of soil building. So yeah, we're pretty pleased.
I think the farmers are too, and all the rest of us are too, because this gives us some hope for the future.
Well, what's really important as well, and a message that I'm trying to put out there, is that it's not just about building soil, it's also about carbon sequestration. I mean, I think I wrote a note to Guner the other day about it, and that, you know, if we can increase the carbon in our soils by 1%, that equals 57 tonnes on 1 hectare. That's 2.5 acres. 57 tonnes of carbon dioxide that we've taken out of the atmosphere just by increasing the organic matter of the soil by 1%. That is a radical figure. That's about 2 times as much as what an American or an Australian emits per year.
That's incredible, Darren.
So that's the real take home of a lot of what we're really trying to do here, I suppose, is we're trying to use agriculture as a means of reversing global warming, just simply by using photosynthesis and by improving their production. So it's a absolute win-win that we can cheaply improve soil, sequester carbon dioxide, and improve production. I mean, that seems to me to be an absolute no-brainer.
Wow, it's like using our agriculture as a remedy.
Absolutely. Well, because, like I said, it's just as easy to create a positive as it is to create a negative, in a sense. I mean, it would require a bit of a production shift, but there's already all of the indices are there. I mean, if we look at agriculture now, it's becoming more and more expensive as fuel prices increase to pay for fertilisers, which are all mostly oil or fossil fuel based. And at the same time, the organic industry is growing quantumly. I mean, it's the only growth industry in agriculture today. So apart from biofuels, so it's just everything's all. As some people would say, the planets are aligned for all of this kind of thing. It's just a matter of getting the technology out there, and of which there's a lot. And it's no better here in the United States. You've got some fantastic people here who know so much about biological farming and can do it very economically and very profitably. So that only lends to the whole integrated scenario that we're trying to promote here.
Well, so Darren, I know you just said this, and I just feel like I need to stress the importance of this, is that Keyline actually will take in carbon. Can you mention that one more time about global warming, the effect that Keyline can have on global warming?
When we create carbon or humus in soils, we have to do that through photosynthesis. So, as anyone knows, photosynthesis takes carbon dioxide in and then converts that into carbohydrates in the root systems of plants. And then as the plants die, those residues are left behind, and that's the organic matter that's left in the soil. Now, if we accelerate the process of root development by using keyline ploughs or subsoilers and other different crop management techniques, well, that can only increase the amount of organic matter production. Now, that just accelerates the amount of carbon dioxide that's being taken out of the atmosphere and put into the ground, which stabilises not only the soils, but it will also help to stabilise our climate. The calculation is that about 12% of the planet's terrestrial surface is in arable agricultural land, so that is, it's able to be ploughed. If the calculation basically is that if we increase the organic carbon, organic matter content in those soils, that 12% of the terrestrial surface of this planet, by 1.6%, then that will basically bring in 100 parts per million of carbon dioxide, which would bring us back to the pre-industrial levels of about 270 parts per million. So, yeah, that's it. I mean, that's why I get excited about this sort of thing, because it's, we can talk about trees and we can talk about all of the other different carbon credit or carbon offset programs that there are, but there is no better solution than soil. And it's the cheapest.
Yeah. Well, it's just, go ahead, Darren. Sorry.
It's just the cheapest and easiest and most pervasive. I mean, we could do this very, very simply.
Wow. I think this is revolutionary, and I have chills right now. I just feel like this is a momentous time. And what you're saying, is it's uplifting, radical, and exciting.
That's right. And I suppose, we need to have people understand the whole system, and they have to understand their consumption, and that the people in the city, their role is the best thing that they can do is through their spending. So if they're going to buy food, we'll buy organic food. Because people mightn't realise, that a lot of the chemicals that we use kill the bacteria and the fungi in the soils, and once you do that, then you're releasing carbon dioxide into the environment. The carbon in the soil actually oxidizes, and carbon and oxygen mixed together is carbon dioxide. So, we've got to reverse that picture, and the best way to do that is for people in the urban areas is to do it through their pocket. There's no other way, through their spending habits. There's no other way that that they're going to be able to have a pervasive effect here.
Now, Darren, how would someone... Now we have Guner here, who is of Orella Ranch. And Guner and Darren, how would Guner's property change if he... And I don't know if you've already started, Guner, implementing Keyline, but how would your property, and what would Guner's property... What would be the change and what it look like, Darren, if he started implementing Keyline?
Oh, well, that's... how long's a piece of string? But I think I'll let Guner have a few words.
Yeah, tell us, Guner.
First off, Darren, 2 words that he took right out of my mouth, and that's no-brainer and a win-win. This stuff, once you get into it, it's so true that it's a no-brainer. I think our days of sterilizing our soil and growing our plants with man-made fertilizers are over, and we're starting to see that in the shifts to organics, and hats off to Darren to just point out that, hey, you gotta vote with your dollars and start buying organic. But Orella, I think, could be a really good example of what this can do. I mean, we could use it as a place to see the changes. The way that Orella would change right now is, first off, we're in an area, a climate, Southern California climate, that we can virtually grow anything in the world. I mean, we're so blessed to be able to virtually grow anything we want. So that alone is amazing. The other thing that's amazing about our soils around here are they're incredibly nutrient rich. However, they're thick clay soils. Clay soil has nutrients, they just happen to be locked up in a thick clay soil form versus, say, a sandy soil that doesn't have much nutrients at all. So our chore is to break up that clay and get those nutrients out. So Keyline can do that, because you're actually, through this integrated technique, you're increasing the amount of humus in the soil, and therefore utilizing the nutrients that are already there. You're just helping break it up. Another thing is that we live in a desert. I mean, we're virtually, Southern California is a desert climate, and so water is a restricting factor, and that's one of the main things of Keyline is water harvesting. And in fact, if before anyone did anything to land, if they stepped back, observed it for preferably a couple years or longer, say a couple generations, and we design the land around the water harvesting that could be done, that would be the best thing to do, hands down, from the very beginning. So what we've done with Darren is kind of looked at our land, and he's picked our brain for our knowledge of the, generations of knowledge of the land. And now we're starting to look at Orella in terms of, okay, our topography's this, our soils are this, our contours are this. Where could we do a little bit of earthworks to create a system where we gain enough water to now grow way more stuff? Because right now we're sucking it out of one well. So like I said, all our eggs in one basket. So we're looking to have multiple systems for a single function, which is a permaculture term, and that's basically just having repetitive sources of water. So Orella's benefits are going to be unlocking the nutrients in our soil, which means we're going to be able to grow more crops more successfully. And even if you call cattle a crop, I mean, it's the more productive pasture land you have, whether it's growing food or it's growing animals or whatever, it's more productive. So that's huge. Number two is the water harvesting capabilities that are going to give us the amount of water to deal with drought periods and stuff like that. We won't be sucking the aquifers down. We'll be using rainwater, and our ranch is right along the coast, so anything that runs off our ranch runs right into the ocean. So we're kind of at the bottom of the deal. So anything that we can harvest is to everyone's benefit. Also decreasing the amount of erosion and runoff. The more successful your soil is, the less runoff and loss you have, which is straight into the ocean. So like we said, just the topography of Orella really lends itself to this. And we've just now started doing some organic vegetable farming where we are irrigating, and we're realizing, gosh, if we had more water, we don't want to tax any wells more. So if we had more water, hence rainwater and catchment, we could do a lot with this. And then other techniques that Darren touched on a little bit, like shelter belts, which are basically windrows, trees. We have lots of wind up in Gaviota. So trees are an interesting thing, and I can touch on it real briefly. We don't have much timber industry down here per se, and Darren showed up and was like, why not? You can grow anything here. You need wind blocks for a more successful agriculture, whether it's for stock or for growing food. They just do better with less wind. So why not integrate contour strip forests or shelter belts, tree plantations, to give yourself wind blocks, make paddocks that are better for growing plants, and then you selective harvest your trees as they grow bigger and close in. You selective harvest. Now you have a resource, and that's right up our alley with Seaborn Designs. We're currently using a resource through Santa Barbara, which is just all the trees that get cut down in the area for whatever reason, wind throw or disease or development, whatever it is. Those trees are usually on their way to the landfill, and Seaborn Designs has worked with the arborists and stuff to intercept that waste stream, and we're currently making furniture and all kinds of stuff out of this recycled material that's otherwise on its way to the landfill. So by integrating trees on our property, now we can do our own selective harvesting of our windrows, our shelter belts, and have an amazing resource. And so all this is integrated. It could take a long time to explain the whole thing, but the the idea is that everything's connected, and it all starts with design, and that's where permaculture really preaches. Sit back and observe, and then really spend some time on design, because a good design is going to pay off huge in the future. So that's what we're after.
Guner, before you discovered permaculture in Keyline, how were you feeling about your ranch? Were you kind of trying to figure out what you were going to do, or?
I'd say pretty classic adolescence, young and dumb, and off to college. And Humboldt's an amazing place, super environmentally conscious, and so we gained an appreciation for a lot of stuff while away at school. And then you get done with university, and you got the travel bug, and so we went and traveled around the world. And it's not until then that you kind of realize, wow, we got it pretty good. Gaviota Coast is pretty nice place to call home, and so it took leaving to realize what we had. And since we've been back, I think the universe is just unfolding huge for us with all this stuff coming at us. It's just unfolding incredibly, and Darren and Keyline and permaculture is just one piece of the puzzle as it unfolds. And I think our place and time and space right now is really critical, and there could be a lot of lessons learned for a lot of people through the work that we're all promoting. So I encourage you to get involved.
Well, it sounds like your intention was to save your land and to regenerate it, and it's almost like all the tools are coming towards you through that intention.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's a tough road to go down this day and age with agriculture, especially a small agricultural piece of land. And I think what it's coming down to is local direct marketing, and we have such an amazing community here. We have to maybe start promoting or supporting our local farmers as much as we can, and realizing that the 10,000 or 2,000 mile Caesar salad or whatever it is, and from across the country could be a thing of the past. And as we make these relationships with more local, whether it's farmers or services, any kind of services, just keep it local. That could be our destined future.
I don't think anyone's going to miss those pale pink tomatoes that were on those salads. But let's talk a bit about permaculture, Darren, and your upcoming course at Quail Springs.
Oh, the course at Quail Springs. Well, I'm just... and, Quail Springs, which is out near, I think it's Ventacopa, I think that's how you say it, just north of Ojai, Kiama, out that in the Kiama River Valley. When we first went out there earlier this year, it seems like a long time ago, to teach a permaculture design course, I was driving along thinking, God, am I going into the Australian desert here? Because it's the sort of landscape, and I was when we got there, we thought, wow, this is quite an amazing place, because it looks like it's just been, it's had a really, really hard time, and was obviously depressed economically, and very few people living in the landscape, and that's a really big thing to us. Is as we've had in Australia, we've had a massive rationalisation of humans in the landscape, from what was quite a densely populated rural area to farms going from like 400 or 500 acres to being 10,000 acres, and the evacuation of people from the environment. And that's exactly what we found when we went out to Quail Springs, and then to be there and to see what these people are doing on this brilliant site, Warren and Colmy and Paul and Cindy, and they're just doing the most amazing job, and they've just got a fantastic ethic with their land and the people that they work with, and the children that they work with, and all of that. And it's just such a testament as to the small efforts that we can make, and how powerful those small efforts can be. Just one instance, they've got which I often cite, they've got little gabion that they've built in their stream there. They've got the only active spring in the whole of the Kiama River Valley, apparently. And they put a little rock wall across this, and it basically lets and every time the silt washes off all of the eroding hills, it builds up behind this rock wall, and it's basically rehumidifying the soils in that valley. Just that little it's about one or two truckloads of rocks that have been cleared from the adjacent carrot farms that have been put into this eroded creek valley, and have built up, just in 1 year, something like 6 foot of silt from 1 or 2 rainfall events. And now that silt is holding all of the moisture in it, and that moisture is actually now going out laterally into the plain, into what was once an active floodplain. So they're rehumidifying that whole system. And I mean, that to me should be policy for this entire continent. I mean, we've just driven through New Mexico and Texas and now into Arizona and looking at all of these drylands that you've got here. And it was raining last night, just watching all of this water running away and all of these eroded creek gullies just falling away, you know. And it just seems such a shame to to allow water to be so destructive when it can at the same time be so creative. And we just have to do a little bit of work to reverse that. So the course out at Quail Springs will be great to get back there and meet with all the people and be with the environment and to meet all of the students that we'll have. That's always a good thing to have, to meet all of these new exciting people, and to help those people then go off back into their lives and have a much more regenerative mindset in how they act as humans. As I like to say, I mean, I try and make people more useful, so that they, because a lot of people feel fairly useless these days, but we try and give them through at least my course, the tools and the techniques to allow them to be more useful and practical humans, so that they can be very pervasive members of society. So that's probably the really exciting thing about going back to Quail Springs and doing that permaculture course.
What would one expect if someone's listening and they don't quite know what happens at a permaculture course? And Guner, if you have anything to add, what happens at a permaculture course?
Could I just quickly say that there's no cult in permaculture, so don't be afraid about that part of it.
There's no robes and
no. Sorry, Gunner.
Permaculture course. Let's see. Well, I'd say massive amounts of inspiration. Permaculture isn't really one. I think of permaculture as a filter to look at the world, and you can really instill the ethics of permaculture across all kinds of disciplines. It's not just in regard to agriculture. It's not just in regard to people often say it's gardening. It's not. It has nothing to do with it. Permaculture is this filter, and there's ethics behind it, and you can really look through that filter at any discipline that you're doing. So it's really hard to put into words. Just know that if you're one of those people out there that want to make a change for the better and believe that the future can be brighter, then you should be taking a permaculture course to educate yourself on all these various techniques, because it's not one specific thing. It's really, really an inspiring thing, and I wish it was taught in schools as a curriculum that everyone has to take, because it's really important stuff for us all to know.
Darren, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, Gunner's hit the nail on the head. It is a filter, but it's basically the course that we teach, the 72-hour permaculture design certificate course. We cover all of the things that have to do with our sustainability or regenerative practices as humans. So how do we design the sustainable or regenerative human habitat. Now, that involves our soils, and that involves our buildings, and it also involves the way that our economic systems work as well. And you know, a lot of that is what you're seeing now. The rise in things like community-supported agriculture, the rise in slow food, the rise in organics, the rise in community banking. All of these things are all modalities that, in a permaculture society, what we see as a permaculture society, are what we want to see. And you know, so a lot of this stuff is already there. It's just a matter of integrating it into some sort of whole, and that having people actually design that. So if you are a economist and you're thinking, well, what can I do with permaculture? Is, you know, well, the first thing you can do as an economist is come along to a course, learn about all of the rest of the things that support your daily bread for a start, and also look at how you can work in your modality, in your discipline, as to integrate and help the rest of it, so that it's all functioning a lot better. So, you know, just because you might think that this stuff is about agriculture or building or gardening or whatever, it's actually not. And that's a really big part of permaculture that hasn't been reinforced, is that, and one of the reasons why I chose my website to be permaculture.biz, because a lot of what we're doing is about business, it's about enterprise, and it's about having people be enterprising and making money and sharing the surplus, but doing it locally and doing it in such a way that it's a regenerative activity, not a degenerative activity.
And bringing it from the fringe, maybe on the outside of society, into the center.
Well, that's right. I mean, you know, these things take time. I often say to people, look, if permaculture, say if Bill Mollison and David Holmgren invented architecture 30 years ago, well, you know, it would. You're not going to in 30 years have architecture established as the norm. It's going to take time, you know. And I relate that also to nature. You know, you can't once you clear a field, you can't expect there to be a forest there the next day. It does take time. You have to, you know, to build a forest takes years of work. And as I said to Guner the other day when we had an email, I said, you know, my original motto for our business was, you know, in the first year you sow corn. When planning for a year sow corn. When planning for a decade plant trees, and when planning for a lifetime train and educate people. Now, so I've gone through my decade, and that's where we're at now, because I've planted my corn, I've planted my trees, and now I'm out there helping people to understand how to do all of the rest of it. So that's exactly the sort of take home that we're trying to give, and you know, give people all of the techniques that they need.
Great, and I'm so glad you're doing this. And Guner, I'm glad that we have a local place that we can go and see, see these principles actually in action.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to keep in touch with the community, and you're welcome to check out our website at OrellaRanch.com, ORELLA ranch.com, and yeah, stay up to speed with some of these new developments, because it's really going to be key for our future here. And I think Santa Barbara and the area is, I mean, we're so poised to make a serious change that will infect a lot of other people. So it takes folks out there, though, to support this kind of stuff. So I encourage you to do that.
The website, again, is www.OrellaRanch.com. And I checked the website out today. It's lovely. It's beautiful. And the oak tree is just gorgeous there. I've actually been to the ranch.
Yeah, that oak tree is amazing.
It definitely has a presence. It's the most amazing tree I've ever seen. Now, Darren, what about your upcoming events? We only have about 2 minutes left. I'm wondering if you could give us just some summary. Yeah.
All right. Well, you can go to my website, which is www.permaculture.biz, and there's a calendar on there of events as well as a big photo log with a lot of our photos from past courses and whatnot.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yep, no worries. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for listening, you guys.
You've been listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. For more information or to hear our other podcasts or interviews, visit www.sustainableworldradio.com. Sustainable World Radio is produced by Jill Cloutier. Music by Dana Lyons. Thanks for listening.